Hey everyone, welcome back to the video on my Storytime channel. So on chapter 9 of Left Behind, the first book of the Left Behind series, and let's continue reading. Page 151, chapter 9. Buck's subconscious waking system failed him that evening, but by 8:45 p.m., he was back in Steve Plank's office and disheveled and apologetic. And he had been right. He felt the resentment from veteran department editors. Juan Ortiz, chief of the international politics section, was incensed that Buck should have anything to do with the summit conference Juan planned to cover in 2 weeks. The Jewish nationalists are discussing an issue I've been following for years. Who would have believed they would declare warning to one world government? Then that would entertain discussion is monumental. They're meeting here rather than Jerusalem or Tel Aviv because their idea is so revolutionary. Most Israeli nationalists think the Holy Land has gone too far with its bounty already. This is historic. Then what's your problem, Plank said, with my adding our top guy to the coverage? Because I am your top guy on this. I'm trying to make sense of all these meetings, Plank said. Jimmy Borland, the religion editor, weighed in. I don't understand Juwan's objections, but I got 2 meetings at the same time. I'm welcome to help. Now we're getting somewhere, Plank said. But I'll be frank, Buck, Borland added. I want to say in the final piece, of course. Not so fast, Buck said. I don't want to be treated like a pool reporter here. I'm going to have my own take on these meetings. I'm not going to try to horn in on your expert territories. I wouldn't want to do the coverages of these individual meetings themselves. I want to bring some coordination to find the meaning, the common denominators. Jimmy, your 2 groups, the religious Jews who want to rebuild the temple, the Ecumenicalists who want some sort of world religious order. Are they going to be at odds with each other? Will there be religious Jews? Orthodox Jews at the ecumenical meeting? Because it seems like cross purposes with rebuilding the temple. At least they're thinking like a religion editor, Jimmy said. That's encouraging. What's your thought? I don't know. That's what makes this so interesting. They should be able to meet at the same time in the same city is too good to be true. Financial editor Barbara Donahue brought closure to the discussion. I've felt with you before on these kinds of efforts, Steve, she said. I appreciate the way you let everybody vent without threat. But we all know your mind is made up about Buck's involvement, so let's lick our wounds and get on with it. If we each get to put our own spin on the coverage in our departments and have some input on the overall piece, and I assume goes in the main well, let's get on with it. Even Ortiz nodded, though to Buck he seemed reluctant. Buck's the quarterback, Plank said, so keep in touch with him. He'll report to me. You want to say anything, Buck? Just thanks a lot, he said ruefully, causing everyone to chuckle. Barbara, your monetarists are meeting right at the UN like they did when they went to the 3 currency thing? She nodded. Same place and pretty much the same people. How involved is Jonathan Stonical? Overtly, you mean? She said. Well, everybody knows he's circumspect, but is there a Stonical influence? Does Duck have lips? Buck smiled and jotted the note. I'll take that as a yes. I like to hang around that one, maybe try to get to Diamond John. Good luck. He probably won't show his face, but he'll be in town, won't he, Barbara? Wasn't he at the plaza for the duration last time? You do get around, don't you? She said. Well, you only had each of the principals up to his suit every day. Juan Ortiz raised a hand. I'm going along with this, and I have nothing personal against you, Buck, but I don't believe there is a way to coordinate the story without inventing some tie-in. I mean, if you want to lead off a future story by saying there were 4 important international meetings in town almost all at once, fine, but to make them interrelated would be stretching. If I find they aren't interrelated, there won't be an overall story, Buck said. Fair enough. Raverseal was nearly beside himself with worry, compounded by his grief. Where was Chloe? He had been inside all day, pacing, mourning, thinking. He felt stale and claustrophobic. He had called Pan Continental and was told his car might be released by the time he got back from his weekend flight. The news on TV showed the amazing progress being made at clearing the roadways and getting mass transportation rolling again. But the landscape would appear tacky for months. Cranes and wreckers had run out of junkyards, so the twisted wreckages would remain in hazardous piles at the sides of the roads and expressways. By the time Reefer got around to calling his wife's church, it was after hours, and he was grateful he wouldn't have to talk to anyone. As he hoped, a new message was on their answering machine that was communicated by a stunned-sounding male voice. You have reached New Hope Village Church. We are planning a weekly Bible study, but for the time being, we will meet just once each Sunday at 10 a.m. While our entire staff except me, most of our congregation are gone. The few of us left are maintaining the building and distributing a videotape our senior pastor prepared for a time such as this. You may come by the church office and pick up a free copy. We look forward to seeing you Sunday morning. Well, of course, Rayford thought. That pastor had often spoken of the rapture of the church. That was why Irene was so enamored with it. What a creative idea to take a message for those who have been left behind. He and Chloe would have to get one the next day. He hoped she would be as interested as he was in discovering the truth. River gazed out the front window in the darkness, just in time to see Chloe at one big suitcase on the ground next to her and paying a cab driver. He ran from the house in his stocking feet, and she gathered her into his arms. Oh, Daddy, she wailed. How's everybody? He shook his head. I don't want to hear this, she said, pulling away from him and looking to the house as if expecting her mother or brother to appear in the doorway. It's just you and me, Chloe, Rayford said, and they stood together in the darkness crying. It was Friday before Buck was able to track down Dirk Burton. He reached supervisor in Dirk's area, the London Exchange. You must tell me precisely who you are and your specific relationship to Mr. Burton before I am allowed to inform you as to his disposition, Nigel Leonard said. I'm also constrained to inform you that this conversation shall be taped beginning immediately. I'm sorry, I'm taping our conversation, sir. If that is a problem for you, you may disconnect. I don't follow. What's to follow? You understand what a tape is? Do you? Of course, I'm turning mine on now as well, if you don't mind. Well, I do mind, Mr. Williams. Why on earth would you be taping? Why would you? Well, we are the ones in the most unfortunate situation. We need to investigate all leads. What situation? Was Dirk among those disappeared? Nothing so tidy as that, I'm afraid. Tell me. At first, your reason for asking. From an old friend. We were college classmates. Where? Princeton. Very well. When? Buck told him. Very well. The last time you spoke to him? I don't recall, okay? We've been trading voicemail messages. Your occupation? Buck hesitated. Senior writer, Global Weekly, New York. Would your interest be journalistic in nature? I wouldn't preclude that, Buck said, trying to get out and let his anger seep through, but I can't imagine that my friend, important as he is to me, is of interest to my readers. Mr. Williams, Nigel said carefully, allow me to state categorically both of our tapes apparently that what I'm about to say is strictly off the record. Do you understand? Because I'm aware that both in your country and in the British Commonwealth, anything that's said following assertion that we are off the record is protected. Granted, Buck said. Beg pardon? You heard me, granted. We're off the record. Now where is Dirk? Mr. Burton's body was discovered in his flat this morning. He has suffered a bald wound to the head. I'm sorry as you were a friend, but suicide has been determined. Buck was nearly speechless. By whom, he managed. The authorities. What authorities? Scotland Yard and security personnel here at the exchange. Scotland Yard, Buck thought. We'll see about that. Why is the exchange involved? We're protective of our information and our personal, sir. Suicide is impossible, you know, Buck said. Do I? If you're a supervisor, you know. There have been countless suicides since his disappearances, sir. Buck was shaking his head as if Nigel could see him from across the Atlantic. Dirk didn't kill himself, and you know it. So I can appreciate your sentiments, but I don't know any more than you did what was in Mr. Burns' mind. I was partial to him, but I would not be in a position to question the conclusion of the medical examiner. Buck slammed the phone down and was marched into Steve Plank's office, still to see what he had heard. That's terrible, Steve said. I have a contact in Scotland Yard who knows Dirk, but I don't dare to talk to him about it by phone. Can I have Marge book me on the next flight to London? I'll be back in time for all these summits, but I've got to go. If you get a flight, I don't know that JFK is even open yet. How about LaGuardia? Ask Marge. You know Carpathy will be here tomorrow. You said yourself he was small potatoes. Maybe he'll still be here when I get back. Reaver Steele hadn't been able to talk to his grieving daughter until leaving the house. Chloe had spent hours in her little brother's room and then in her parents' bedroom picking through their personal effects to add to the boxes of memories her father had put together. Rayford felt so bad for her. He had secretly hoped she would be of comfort to him. He knew that she would be eventually, but for now she needed time to face her own loss. Once she had cried herself out, she was ready to talk. After she had reminisced to the point where Rayford didn't know if his heart could take anymore, she finally changed the subject to the phenomenon of the disappearances themselves. Daddy, in California, they're actually buying into the space invasion theory. You're kidding. No, maybe it's because you were always so skeptical and skeptical about all that tabloid newspaper stuff, but I just can't get into it. I mean, it has to be something supernatural, otherworldly, but what? It just seems as if some alien life force was capable of doing this, they would also be capable of communicating to us. Wouldn't they want to take over now or demand ransom or get us to do something for them? Who, Martians? Daddy, I'm not saying I believe it. I'm saying I don't. But doesn't my reasoning make sense? You don't have to convince me. I admit I wouldn't have dreamed of any of this even possible a week ago, but my logic has been stretched to the breaking point. Rayford hoped Chloe would ask his theory. He didn't want to start right in on the religious theme. She had always been antagonistic about that, having stopped going to church at high school when both he and Irene gave up fighting with her over it. She was a good kid, never in trouble. She made good grades enough to get her a partial academic scholarship, and though she occasionally stayed out too late and went through a boy crazy period in high school, they never had to bail her out of jail, and there was never any evidence of drug use. He didn't take that lightly. Rayford and Irene knew Chloe had come home from more than one party drunk enough to spend the night vomiting. The first time he and Irene chose to ignore it to act as if it didn't happen. They believed she was level-headed enough to know better the next time. When the next time came, Rayford had a chat with her. I know, okay, Dad? You don't need to start in on me. I'm not starting in on you. I would make sure you know enough not to drive if you drink too much. Of course I do. And you know how stupid and dangerous it is to drink too much. I thought you were starting in on me. Just tell me you know. I think I already said that. He had shaken his head and said nothing. Daddy, don't give up on me. Go ahead, give me both barrels. Prove you care. Don't make fun of me, he had said. Suddenly you're going to have a child won't know what to say or do either. When you love somebody with all your heart and all you care about is their welfare, Rayford hadn't been able to continue. For the first time in his adult life, he had choked up. He had never happened during his arguments with Irene. He had always been too defensive, concerned too much about making his point to think about how much he cared for her. But with Chloe, he really wanted to say the right thing to protect her from herself. He wanted her to know how much he loved her, and it was coming out all wrong. He was as if he were punishing, lecturing, reprimanding, condescending. That had caused him a break. He hadn't planned it. The involuntary show of emotion got through to Chloe. For months, she had been drifting from him for both their parents. She had been sullen, cold, independent, sarcastic, challenging. He knew it was all part of growing up and had become one's own person, but it was a painful, scary time. As he bit his lip and breathed deeply, hoping to regain composure and not embarrass himself, Chloe had come to him and wrapped her arms around his neck, just as he had as a little girl. "Oh, Daddy, don't cry," she had said. "I know you love me. I know you care. Don't worry about me. I'll learn my lesson. I won't be stupid again, I promise." He had dissolved into tears, and so had she. They had bonded as never before. He didn't recall ever having disciplined her again, and though she had not come back to church, he had started to drift by then himself. They had become buddies, and she was growing up to be just like him. Irene had kidded them to their children, each had their own favorite parent. Now, after just days after Irene and Raimi had disappeared, Rayford hoped the relationship that had really begun with the emotional moment with Chloe, when Chloe was in the high school, blossomed so they could talk. What was more important than what had happened? He knew now what her crazy college friends and the typical Californian believed. What else is new? He always generalized that people on the West Coast afforded the tabloids the same weight the Midwesterners gave up on the Chicago Tribune or even the New York Times. Late in the day, Rayford and Chloe reluctantly agreed they should eat. They worked together in the kitchen, rusting up a healthy mixture of fruits and vegetables. There was something calming and healing about working with her in silence. It was painful on the one hand, because anything domestic reminded them of Irene. When they sat to eat, they automatically sat in their customary spots at either end of the table, which made the other two open spots much more conspicuous. Rayford noticed Chloe clouding up again, and he knew she was feeling what he was. It hadn't been that many years since they had enjoyed 3 or 4 meals a week together as a family. Irene always sat on his left, Raimi on his right, Chloe directly across. The emptiness and silence were jarring. Rayford was ravenous and finished huge salad. Chloe stopped eating soon after she had begun and wept silently, her head down, tears falling in her lap. Her father took her hand and she rose and sat in his lap, hiding her face and sobbing. His heart aching for her, Rayford rocked her until she was silent. Where are they? She whined at last. "You want to know where I think they are?" he said. "Do you really want to know?" "Of course. I believe they're in heaven." "Oh, Daddy, there were some religious nuts at school who were saying that, but if they knew so much about it, how come they didn't go? Maybe they realized they had been wrong and had missed their opportunity. You think that's what we've done?" Chloe said, returning to her chair. "I'm afraid so. Didn't your mother tell you she believed that Jesus could come back someday and that take his people directly to heaven before they died?" "Sure, but she was always more religious than the rest of us. I thought she was just getting a little carried away." "Good choice of words." "She got carried away, Chloe. Raimi too." "You don't really believe that, do you?" "I do. That's about as crazy as the Martian invasion theory." Rayford defensive. "So what's your theory?" Chloe began to clear the table and spoke with her back to him. "I'm honest enough to admit that I don't know. So now I'm not being honest." Chloe turned to face him, sympathy on her face. "Don't you see, Dad? You're gravitated to the least painful possibility. If we were voting, my first choice would be that my mom and my little brother are in heaven with God, sitting in the clouds playing their harps. So I'm deluding myself. Is that what you're saying? Daddy, I don't fault you, but you have to admit this is pretty far-fetched." Now Rayford was angry. What's more far-fetched than beetles disappearing right out of their clothes? Who else could have done that? Years ago, we had blamed on the Soviets, said they developed some super new technology, some death rate that affected only human flesh and bone. But there's no Soviet threat anymore, and the Russians lost people too. And how did this whatever it was, how did they choose to take who to take and who to leave? You're saying that the only logical explanation is God, that it was only left the rest of us? That's what I'm saying. I don't want to hear this. Chloe, our own family is a perfect picture of what happened. If what I'm saying is right, the logical 2 people are gone, and the logical 2 are left. You think I'm that much of a sinner? Chloe, listen, whatever you are, I am. I'm not judging you. If I'm right about this, we missed something. I'm always calling myself a Christian, mostly because I was raised that way when I wasn't Jewish. Now you're saying you're not a Christian? Chloe, I think the Christians are gone. So I'm not a Christian either. You're my daughter and the only member of our family still left. Love you more than anything on earth. But if the Christians are gone, everyone else is left. I don't think anyone is a Christian. Some kind of super Christian, you mean? Yeah, true Christian. Apparently those who are taken recognized by God as truly his. How else can I say it? Daddy, what does this make God? Some sick, sadistic dictator? Careful, honey. You think I'm wrong, what if I'm right? Then God is spiteful, hateful, mean? Who wants to go to heaven with a God like that? That's where your mom and Raimi are. That's where I want to be. I want to be with them too, Daddy. But tell me how this fits with the loving, merciful God. When I went to church, I got tired of hearing how loving God is. He never answered my prayers and never felt like he knew me or cared about me. Now you're saying I was right. He didn't. I didn't qualify, so I got left behind. You better hope you're not right. But what if I'm not right? Who is right, Chloe? Where are they? Where is everybody? See? You've latched on this heaven thing because it makes you feel better. But it makes me feel worse. I don't buy it. I don't even want to consider it. Rayford dropped the subject and went to watch television. Limited regular programming had resumed, but was still able to find continuing news coverage. He was struck by the usual name of the new Romanian president he had recently read about, Carpathia. He was scheduled to arrive at LaGuardia in New York on Saturday and held a press conference Monday morning for addressing the United Nations. So LaGuardia was open. That was where Rayford was supposed to fly later that evening with an oversold flight. He called Pentecost at O'Hare. Glad you called, the supervisor said. I was about to call you. Is your 74757 rating up to date? Okay, that's where I'll leave off for now. Part 1 of chapter 9 of Left Behind. And I'll take everybody. Another video from my Storytime channel.